Good morning, everyone. I don't think it's 7 o'clock. Might be 6. So this is the traffic jam that the title speaks of. And what we're dealing with here are what I'm dealing with here mainly are books which were in the basement here during a flood we had last spring. A pipe burst and all of the things in the basement here had to be removed and fumigated or something to keep the moisture out. And much of the things that were in the basement were books. And books are very good at getting moldy. Oh my God. And of these books, I think they survived perfectly fine. I've been looking at them and none of them seem to be moldy. So I think the operation was successful. But unless any one of you can tell me why I should keep my high school calculus book, let me know. See if I can find it. The reason I kept it, we didn't get very far before I graduated with that book, but it was a book that for many years during my schooling, I would see the seniors walking around with this beautiful yellow book. And I want that book. I want that book. It wasn't just sort of a yellow buff color, which you see. It also had this really cool drawing on it. And the drawing was, some sort of XYZ plot with this spiral curve and a triangle on it, drawn as if with a sort of wet pen. And I also like the shape of the book. The book was squarer than most. And I just loved that book for the cover. It was the cover. Okay, I admit it. I'm shallow. I go as far as the cover. And many of these books are books I've only looked at the cover. Yeah. Oh my God. I was interested in history, so there's a lot of history books. I also liked beautiful vintage books. There's one here that I think I want to keep if I can find out which one it is. It's a choral book, and why I like it, I'll show you if I can get into a flat area. So here's this book. It's in Swedish. Like, okay, I'm going to learn Swedish to read it. No. But let me just, oh, cat. We have a cat here that's driving us mental. Let me turn the camera around so you can see why I like this book. Oh, camera, microphone. Back camera. So the cover here isn't very interesting, but what I like is it's divided. You've got the hymns up here and the Bible verses or something down here. So you could be, singing this, but the priest or whatever is referring to this chapter here. So you can sort of do two things at once in that Lutheran church in Stockholm or wherever the hell it was. Here's something my mother was making. I don't mean to laugh. A needlepoint, Troy, C, Gusta, and she ended with that. And anyway, so Troy, Todd, and I found, unrolled it and found what it said. And we said, Troy, do you want this? And Troy was coming down the stairs. No, throw it away, toss it. See, I'm dealing with the gamut. I want to keep everything that my parents made, and Troy wants to throw almost everything out. Here's pictures of my father that my brother took in photo class. They were supposed to come up with images showing different kinds of emotion. So my father was the guinea pig for this particular job. Here's awful pictures I drew in 1968. How old was I in 1968? I was older. I knew better. I should have known better. So anyway, all of this and these flat boxes over here contain artwork that I did and my father did and my mother did. In fact, unless we've already got them. Where did they go? There's a painting my mother didn't paint that much, but there's one painting she did that's in one of these boxes here. So what my job is today is to clear this out and to put it in boxes, and 9/10 of the boxes, in fact, they're already over here, some of them, are going to be filled with books, but they're going to be not randomly packed, but they will be packed by like books. Here's a set that we have of the Ridpath Library of Universal Literature, which my grandfather, I guess, thought was an important thing to have. And so he bought that set. The pages hadn't even been opened. They were still, this is when books, you had to cut the pages to read them. Back in the olden days, they were sort of bound that way. And there's this set that I bought years ago. See if I can unearth it here without causing trauma. It's this beautifully bound Shakespeare's Works, which volume one of the volumes, and you can see here's the cover, and you're wondering, well, you can have that rebuilt. No. So what I'm going to do, these are engravings. I'm going to remove the engravings and cut them up and turn them into something else. Or I don't know what I'm going to do, but I realize, taking apart a Shakespeare, here's Cleopatra and her asp, her little tiny asp. I realize that, I'm going to go to hell for destroying books like this, but if I if they were bound nicely, yes, I would keep it. I will keep this one. This is not broken. It's this book that I'm going to show you is almost entirely worthless. There are books like this. If you see these in a bookstore, they're going to say, oh, I can't wait. It's just masterpieces of French art. Now, these were put out, showing artwork that was made that year, or that decade. And they're by perfectly legitimate artists, but they're just stupid art. They neglected, the Monets and the Cézannes because they had these other people that did work that was supposed to be more interesting. This iPad, when I'm broadcasting, even though I have lots of power, it suddenly will crash as if it ran completely out of power. And it has a little battery with the little red thing, and you plug it in, it starts up again. It brings me back to where I left off, and it says that I've got 15% power. So I don't understand how it works, but and it does it even when I have 75% power. So there's something screwy about this particular iPad and broadcasting live. So anyway, there are a number of books that I want to save. There was a dedicated bookcase that had books that belonged to my parents, yearbooks of theirs, college yearbooks, books they had when they were children that they gave to me or let me read. And these are the books that I'm not going to have any kids, but my niece and nephew might have kids, and maybe they would like to have a book to give to their kids that belong to great great grandfather or something. When they deal with my cold dead body, my little brother was saying to me, he said, if you die before I do, Pierre, I'm just going to open the doors of your unit and say free. Just take what you want, because he's not going to deal with sorting out my life. So you better get in line. Read the obituary papers. Per Gustafson died yesterday of mysterious causes. Buy your ticket to Boston and stand in line, because when my brother gets there, it's going to be free. Memory Lane, traffic jam. Back to the title. Dealing with these books, I'm dealing with. Does it look like there's a supernova happening in my kitchen here? Can I? That's better. Just. When you're dealing with going through things that you inherited, going through your parents' things when they die or whatever, it was very interesting. A lot of the stuff that was in the basement belonged to me, because when I moved away, I moved far, and shipping everything I owned to Boston would have been expensive and stupid. And because I kept coming back here, it was nice to be able to see my calculus book at Christmas time when I would return. And it reassured me somehow, having this book from high school. But there were a few things that were left here that belonged to my little brothers, and especially the little brother, who is the one who likes this house the least, and essentially wants us to sell it, which we are doing. But there was a box that had stuff that he left here at the bottom shelf of what was his room or something, or was in a box somewhere that he forgot about. And he was very keen on keeping much of it. Proportionally, he's keeping more than I am. But anyway, it's just an interesting thing, because you get not only your memories that not always are good, but memories of other people in the family, and you feel maybe you don't have the right to throw away my grandfather's memories along with his books. I never met my grandfather, that grandfather that bought those books that we're donating. But anyway, they're going to be dumped. In fact, I wonder if they were his father, because the books, I think, are older than he was. So maybe they belong to my great-grandfather, those books. The Ridpath Library of Universal Literature. That was a publishing company. The Ridpath History of the World was essentially a mail order book or set of books you would get for your farm in rural Minnesota, where you didn't have museums and the interweb back then. You had to, and maybe they didn't even have a library that was close by that was very good. So Ridpath It's sort of like the Sears catalog of knowledge and history and stuff. You would choose from their selection these things, and they were luridly illustrated, and that they might have contained a factoid or two. Hey. Well, I've had years to do this. I mean, my father had not a quick decline, it was a slow decline, and we knew the end was going to happen. But we also knew that he really enjoyed having this stuff around here. So for him, for the stuff that we inherited that he owned, it's a little easier for us to get rid of. We're keeping maybe 1/20th of the stuff we have here, and we're moving it to the cabin, to our lake home. Or if, like Troy said, I really like that bronze sculpture. It's a group of protesters in bronze. One's carrying a flag, and they're I just play, and it's peace sign is being raised by one of them. I never liked the sculpture particularly, but it was, my dad bought it during the era, I think, of the 60s counterculture, peaceniks and anti-war stuff. And Troy, my youngest brother, who seems in many ways the least sentimental, wanted that for his house. So, and Todd and I are, God, sure, of course, take it. There's something here I'll show you. Hello, India. There's something here I'll show you that is really, really cool, and we're going to sell it. It's a 10-foot long marquee, carved wood, that says Wilmot's Electric Picture Palace, and it has a couple of cherubs and a naked lady on it. And it's was, my father bought it in New York. He said it came from Coney Island, and I think it's before motion pictures, even silence. I think it might have been a, because I think they would have said moving picture, but Wilmot's Electric Picture Palace, it makes it seem like it was magic, maybe magic lanterns. But it's this cool carved, very bas relief carved sign that would be great for someone's entertainment room. So that'll go on the chopping block, the auction block, the chopping block. So, and that would be something, would we really want to keep it, or do we want the couple $1,000 we're going to get? And I think we've decided we want the couple thousand, or whatever 1,000 we get for it. Here's what it looks like. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. Wilmot's Electric Picture Palace. Where's the naked lady? There's my camera here. I guess that's the naked lady with her boobs. She's not entirely naked. One of her boobs is she has a wardrobe malfunction. Here's my dad in bronze. Come on, Dad, sit up straight. Well, you know, the legacy of hoarding and collecting things was passed down genetically or something. So I get my one of my brothers and I get our hoarding and our collecting legitimately from the experience that we had growing up. My little brother doesn't think he collects things, but he does. He does. So his things are just not as pretty as the things that I collect. But anyway, there's the books. We're going through the books. We're going to donate the books, most of the books that we have here. There's some books that were sort of part of my youth and what I was interested in when I was a kid that I'm not really interested in now. But when I want to feel sort of cozy and comfy, it's like comfort food. You know, I'll grab the 25 Silver Ghosts book about Rolls Royces, and I'll look through it and remember what, not so much about that car or the picture, but I go back in time to being in junior high school or high school, whenever it was. So look at the moth holes in this thing. We have a lake home that we also inherited, and we're keeping that for the next decade or so, at least, I hope. And we're moving the things we like collectively and want to keep collectively, we're bringing up there. There are 3 Japanese snow lanterns, for example, that we'll bring up there. You know, if I had a yard, and it might be nice to put it there, but I don't have a yard, so. Victrola records, yeah. In this house, there are 4 Victrolas, all of which I own. One will go to the cabin, maybe 2, though I'd have to say I'll move my bed out of my bedroom if you let me have this cam, and I'll sleep on the floor. But yeah, well, we have the loons, but not the lily pads up there. Well, they're there in parts of the lake, but not the part that we are on. It snowed here last night a little bit, so in a minute I'll show you the thing I'm going to miss the most about this place is the morning dawn, which unfortunately it's cloudy today, so you can't see it, but I'll show you the view that would have the rising sun. And I'm always an early riser, as many of you might know, and part of that, I think, was due to the fact that it was so beautiful to wake up here and see the rosy fingered dawn light up the yard. The yard itself is not very big, but it looks bigger because we have neighbors to the right of us and neighbors to the left of us and neighbors to the front of us. But the neighbor to the back of us, the backyard, is, a mile away, or 2 miles or 3 miles or something, I don't even know. So this is the view I grew up seeing every morning. And we're facing east, and that little thing there that looks, I don't know if you saw that, but that little bit there is it's called a lake, but it's essentially a swamp. That the lake at its deepest is about 3 feet deep, and beyond that is a stretch of land, and behind that land is the Minnesota River. And so it sort of looks like we own all that land. There's a Victrola, a Sonora. It has a key, actual key, to lock it, to keep the children from playing it. So it's the view in the sunrise. My iPad again crashed. Had power. I'm back. It crashes and shuts down. I have to restart the computer, the iPad. But I'm back. Sometimes the lake there is completely covered with tall reeds, so it looks just like a meadow. In fact, the name of the lake is Long Meadow Lake. So it does look pretty green sometimes. And when you have a flood in the spring, sometimes it's 10 feet deep. But right now, it's probably about 2 feet deep, 3 feet deep. Now, I don't know if it's a problem with a glitch with the iPad or with broadcasting, if somehow the iPad senses that broadcasting takes up so much energy, and when it's using all of these ones and zeros, it suddenly crashes. I don't quite understand it, because sometimes I plug it back in and it starts up and I have 40% of power, and it seems like it happens both with this iPad and the other iPad I have. So I don't know what the problem is. Maybe it's and I think it also happens with Skype too. It's not just, or Zoom. I think it happens with other live broadcasting things. So I try to plan ahead and have these things plugged in and completely powered up. So did you see my 3 top pens on Apple Boom pens, Todd? I can't remember whether you commented that you had or not. It was interesting picking the 3, though I think I picked 2 of the 3 were sure things. They were, the Waterman 494, which individually that pen is just magnificent because of its everything about it. The 51 is, ideally, one could argue that is the perfect pen. One could make the argument. And so I talked more about, for that, including that pen was sort of a no-brainer for me. But my favorite story of the 51 is that I hated it so much. I really, really hated that pen. And now I really, really love it. And it's that element of discovery that some of us have in our collecting. Other people, they have a shopping list. I want the rarest and the biggest and the best example of everything. And they have their shopping list and they fill it up. They go to a pen show and they check it off. They buy a pen and they add it to their collection. And they don't learn a goddamn thing. They just get more pens. And, they may, I'm simplifying it a lot, and I don't mean to do that, because there are collectors who are very sophisticated in their collecting. But when I hear them talk about their collections, they often repeat sort of the auction catalog factoids. This is a rare duofold, bandless duofold, made in red hard rubber, made in blah, 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 and also blah, blah, blah. And I don't hear a passion or there isn't a eureka moment that had happened in their representation of description of the pen. So yeah. So anyway, with my top 3, they were, and I picked 3 pens to sort of describe my relationship with fountain pens in all aspects. And one was the Skyline. I've always liked the Skyline, but and it was one of my first pens. It's a pen that I know that I can really trust selling to someone, and I do like selling pens, not so much to make money. That's sometimes handy. But to get pens in other talented hands, mainly artists, sketchers, and calligraphers, really makes me happy. And those pens were a big part of it. 51s and Estabrooks, they were as well, but those were more toward the students that were taking notes. And that's fine too, but my passion was really for the people that were going to be drawing or doing calligraphy with these things. So the Skylines were covering most of those bases. So anyway, it was a neat, I thought my top 3 pens did something a little bit differently from other people. Some people are very sentimental. This is the first pen I got and I love this pen and blah blah blah, and the blah 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 in that case is more interesting to me than the blah 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 of someone who with their checkbook went to a pen show and bought a very expensive pen. That's just a show off, you know. So now if someone went out and said, you know, I'm going to research and find the very first pen, or at least the first model of the very first Parker and the very first Waterman and the very first Wall and the very first Conklin. If someone had a sort of a sophisticated collection like that, did research and found out what the very firsts were, and went out and made a collection of those, I think that would be an interesting collection. Or if someone said, it's a shopping list, I guess. It's making the shopping list or deciding how are you going to curate a collection. And Otto Yang says, I don't. I just amass. I've got bunches of collections. He has a collection. Otto Yang's collection is one of the best in the world, I think, because of its curatorial focus. And I haven't seen his collection since he moved to California, but hopefully I'll go out sometime soon and look at it again. A few of the pens he got from me, it'll be nice to see them again, but his collection is just so specifically aimed to be, I mean, he has pens that I think are more common. I think most of his collection are unusually proportioned pens. But he also has, the snake pen and things like that. So those are more normal. They're just sort of rare and scarce. But when I think of his collection, I think of the short, fat, stubby ones and the long, slender ones and the ones that have weird proportioned cap bands and things like that. I think those are the ones that where I imagine what the common denominator is. But a 56 isn't weird or weirdly proportioned, and he loves those. For example, if he had a black giant, if he had two black giants and had to get rid of one, he would probably pick the one that had the goofiest nib for it. There was a black giant we had at the Boston Pen Auction one year, and it had an accountant nib. You know, a nib that you could make 20 normal nibs out of had an accountant nib, which just cracked me up. And you could fill that pen with black ink, and you could do your accounting with this little tiny fine scritchy scratchy nib probably for a year without having to refill it. So that might be the nib he'd keep on it, just because it's weird. It's weirder than if it were a regular Parker semi-flexible medium or broad nib. He might. There's a pen that I sold Mike Fultz, and Mike Fultz is now dead, and he talked to Otto before that, and Otto said, I hear that Pierce sold you some stub-nibbed safety pens, which I had done, and he didn't remember it, but I remember the stub nibs as being, you screwed up the bottom thing and the nib came up, and the nib was almost as fat. The tip of the nib was almost as fat as the widest part of the nib. And it was just this, buck teeth coming up. And Mike Fultz told me, I said 2 of them. He bought them both. He told me they were for sign painters. So Otto wanted these pens, and Fultz didn't remember owning them. And I think I sold Mike also another pen that Otto really wanted, and I would have kept it if it worked. It was a Dunn pen in smooth sterling silver. So it was a lady's pen, had a ring on the top, had a smooth sterling cap, smooth sterling barrel, and then this red Bakelite knob on the back. So, it looked more like a lipstick, thing than a pen. So that would be another pen that Otto would love. And maybe he bought it from the estate or bought it from Mike. I don't really know. But anyway. My brother posted a picture Pier's home, and my niece said, "Oh my God." Chiltons are really neat. I especially like the early hard rubber ones that had that long cap. You unscrew it and you post it, but then it had this very complicated looking barrel section and other section, and it reminded me of the stages of the Saturn rocket. There's an extra stage in there, and it's they're sort of ugly. The ones I'm talking about, the earlier ones, later on, when they improved the filling system, they were able to have the end come off the back like a touchdown. But when you had to move the entire barrel, you needed to have more of an area to grip. And you had to have the pen and the ink, so you couldn't grip by the section. They had to add like this much. I'm just realizing this now. I'm sure I figured it out before, but I never voiced it. But they had to add this much of the pen to hold the pen when you're filling it, and it just. But they're so well made. Oh my God, they're beautifully made. I have a couple of the older ones, and then the later ones, the later Chiltons, I like as well. I have a few of those. But the Crockers, the predecessor to the Chiltons, those are fun. And you know what that little thing is that you unscrew to make the lever work? On the back of the pen, that has a name. That little thing you unscrew partly to lift it up. You know the Chilton I'm talking about, the lever fill Chilton. No, after that. Well, no, before the blow filler. Well, hatchet filler. Well, okay. I'll let you. I'll let you call it a hatchet filler. Yeah, it has a nut on the back, a little knurled end, like a duofold end cap. You unscrew it a little bit to pull it off its post. You lift up, and it's connected to essentially a lever that squishes the sack. When I think of a hatchet filler, it's more like the thing that looks like a hatchet that comes down like that and pushes the lever, an actual thing that in its shape looks like a hatchet. But maybe that lever is considered a hatchet filler. I learn something every day. But the little thing you turn, the little hard rubber thing you turn to release the hatchet, we'll call it. You know what that little hard rubber thing you turn is called? It has a name. It's really cute. It's a cute name. Krasner told me about it. And it's in the directions for these things. So it's like if I read the directions, if I had directions for one of these things. But do you know the name of the thing, the little thing you turn? Step one, at the end of the pen, you'll see a blank. Turn that blank and lift up the lever. What? It was called, I'll just tell you, it was called a nifty nut. Twist the or turn the nifty nut to unlock it from its post and lift up. The nifty nut. Well, look it up. The nifty nut on the Crocker lever fill, hatchet fill pens. Those pens are quite lovely too. I love The clip. Yeah, it is very 20s. It's swell. No, that's more 50s. Nifty nut. Gee, boys and girls, here's something that's nifty. Well, I think I'm gonna. Who else is in the room still? We had someone from India. I met someone yesterday from Thailand who's new to me. The bee's knees. Yeah. I was playing. The people that brought back all of the furniture and the boxes of books from the storage area where they were fumigated and demoldified and demildewed were, oh, Chivello, nice to see you. They brought down a Brunswick Victrola. So I went upstairs and got some Victrola records from my Sonora Victrola and brought them down. And is that some sort of record player? Oh, it plays vinyl. Oh, that's so cool. It plays vinyl. I thought, oh no. It's much older than that. So Todd, meet Todd. And Schiavello's here.
Schiavello, Todd, hello.
That's my brother Todd. So now that he's up, I'm going to talk with him about what we have to do today. And Schiavello, it was really good seeing you. I haven't seen your other half very much lately either. So I hope Frederick is doing well. But I need to get my day going here to deal with the traffic jam on Memory Lane. So, but we'll catch you later, okay? Bye.